I analysed over 300 cloud job descriptions to find out what skills really get you hired. And the data shows that the skills you're probably studying right now aren't the ones getting people hired. As a self-taught cloud engineer now working at a top bank in London, I don't want you to waste time learning the wrong skills. So in this video, I'll reveal what the in-demand skills actually are and give you an easy, actionable plan to start learning them today. And so to start, let's look at the fifth most in-demand skill. This skill showed up in 94 out of the 318 job postings I looked at, and it's something neglected in a lot of courses and tutorials. This is Terraform, or more generally, infrastructure as code. But why is it so important? Think about the first time you used the AWS console. You're clicking through all those pages, second-guessing every single drop-down menu just to launch one server. It feels like you're navigating a bit of a maze. Now, imagine a real company needs you to build that exact same setup 3 more times for 3 different environments, and they all have to be perfect. Doing that by hand isn't just slow, it can lead to some pretty bad mistakes. Now, I didn't realize how critical this was until I landed my first cloud job. I saw that everything was defined in code. Every server, every network, every single resource. But now you might be thinking, why Terraform over other tools like AWS CloudFormation? I'm not saying that every single company in the world uses Terraform. Different companies will use different tools, of course. But in the job descriptions I analyzed, Terraform was the most common skill for infrastructure as code. So it's more of a case of giving yourself the best chance to match what skills are in demand. At the end of the day, companies want to hire engineers who can come in, understand the code base, and start contributing value immediately. Knowing Terraform means you can integrate directly into a team's workflow from day one. So what's the best way to learn it? My personal recommendation is to start with the official introductory tutorials from HashiCorp. They're really good, they're free, and they guide you through the core concept. I personally don't think you need to go and get any Terraform certification. The hands-on skills are more important. If you've completed the intro tutorials and want to go deeper, I really like the book Terraform Up and Running. It has some great sections on how businesses actually use Terraform. Although Terraform is important, the fourth most in-demand skill is even more critical, and pretty much every single company will require you to know it. But before we cover that, I'm currently building a step-by-step system designed to take you from zero experience to having an interview-ready portfolio of impressive AWS projects. You'll use Terraform to build these projects and follow a simple blueprint to share them on your resume. You'll also receive personalized feedback on your project from a professional cloud engineer. If this sounds good to you, join the free waitlist at the link below and get early access with an exclusive discount. So the fourth most in-demand skill shows up in 30% of the 318 job postings. And it's not a single tool, but more of a system that every company will use. To explain this, let me ask you a question. What actually happens in a professional cloud team after a developer writes some code? Let's say a developer on your team, Sarah, writes some Terraform code for deploying an S3 bucket. What does she do next? Does she just run it from her laptop and hope for the best? In a real team, the answer is no. As soon as Sarah submits her code, an automated system takes over. You can think of it kind of like a spell checker, making sure her code is formatted correctly. Then it runs some automated checks to make sure her change won't break anything. This automated system is known as a CI/CD pipeline, or continuous integration, continuous development, and it exists to prevent a company's worst nightmare. There's this famous story about a financial trading company called Knight Capital. One of their engineers made a manual deployment error. He forgot to copy some of their code to one of their 8 servers. That single mistake triggered their algorithm to start buying and selling shares uncontrollably. In just 45 minutes, they lost $440 million, and the company almost went bankrupt, all from one manual error that an automated check would have caught instantly. Hopefully this highlights the importance of CI/CD for businesses and why it's such an in-demand skill on job listings. But what does this mean for you? You need to understand CI/CD concepts and get hands-on with at least one tool. It could be GitHub Actions, Jenkins, or GitLab CI. Honestly, the specific tool doesn't matter that much when you're starting out. The skills are transferable. Understanding the purpose of each stage is what hiring managers are actually looking for. In an interview, they won't ask you about the specific syntax of a tool. They'll ask you to explain the pipeline you built and why you included certain steps. I actually got asked a question like this in my interview. But as important as CI/CD is, the data showed that our number 3 skill is even more impactful, and not understanding it could be holding you back from landing a cloud job. For a lot of people trying to break into cloud, this third most in-demand skill is really the big scary monster. It's a topic that makes them feel like they'll never be ready, and honestly, I get it. That's because there's a huge myth in the learning community that to get a job, you need to become a Kubernetes expert. Kubernetes comes in as the third most in-demand skill, mentioned in 32% of the job descriptions. But people think that you have to spend months learning the theory of every single component before you can even think about putting it on your resume. And this belief creates a massive confidence gap, and in some cases, it stops people from making any progress at all. I think for your first cloud role, this is a bit of a lie. Hiring managers aren't looking to hire you as a senior Kubernetes admin. They're looking for engineers who know how to use Kubernetes. So what does a user actually do? They take an application that's been packaged into a Docker container and they deploy it onto a managed Kubernetes service like Amazon EKS. They know the basic commands to check on that application, see its logs, and scale it up or down if it gets more traffic. That's the core of it. It's the 80-20 rule. This 20% of knowledge is what you'll use 80% of the time in your first role. But how do you learn it? If you're completely new to Kubernetes, I'd recommend this 2-step learning path. Step 1, forget Kubernetes for now and learn Docker first. You need to be comfortable packaging a simple application into a container. Step 2, once you can do that, try to deploy that container onto a managed Kubernetes service like EKS. Trying to do this and figuring stuff out on your own will give you a greater learning experience. But even though Kubernetes is important, this next skill appeared in far more job descriptions, and not having at least a basic understanding of it can get your resume rejected before a human even sees it. Just missing out on a top spot, being mentioned in 49% of job postings, we have our number 2 skill. Now this is one that I see causes a lot of anxiety. It's a skill that often makes people from non-technical backgrounds start doubting themselves, and that skill is Python. But you might be thinking, okay, but what about other languages? And the data on this is quite clear. In my analysis, Python was mentioned in almost half of all of the jobs, around 49% of them. The next closest was shell scripting, which came in at around 24%, and Go in around 20%. So Python appeared more than twice as often as any other programming language. So if you had to pick one language to learn to maximize your chances of getting a cloud job, it sort of makes sense to choose Python. But for a lot of people, the moment they see Python on a job description, the imposter syndrome can kick in. You know, a voice starts saying, I'm not a developer, I don't have a computer science degree, I don't know about data structures and algorithms. And this really stops talented people from applying for roles that they're perfectly capable of doing. And I want to tell you that the idea that you need to be a fantastic software developer to get a cloud engineering job is a myth. For most cloud roles, you're not being hired to build complex applications. You're being hired to be more of an automator. An automator uses Python as the glue to connect and manage cloud services. They write simple scripts to do things like automatically delete old backups or generate reports on security settings. For example, you'll probably be working a lot with the AWS Python library Boto3 to interact with cloud resources. But to use that library effectively, you need to understand the basics of Python itself. So if you're looking to learn Python for cloud, this means your first step isn't to jump straight into cloud-specific libraries or cloud-specific things. It's to build a solid foundation in the basics of Python. You know, you can't write a script to automate something if you don't understand variables, loops, and functions. Something that I personally recommend is the book Automate the Boring Stuff with Python. It teaches you the fundamentals through practical exercises, not just theory. Master the basics first, and then learn cloud-specific libraries like Boto3. But as critical as Python is, the data shows there is one skill that is even more in demand. It is the single most requested skill in the 300 plus jobs I analyzed. And without it, you'll find it close to impossible to landing a cloud job. This appeared in 64% of the jobs I analyzed. You can master the other 4 skills perfectly, but without this one, you may not even get an interview. And ironically, it's the one skill a lot of beginners try to skip because they think it's too boring or outdated. To understand what this skill is, I want you to stop thinking about cloud for a second and think about a city. A city is full of important buildings, hospitals, offices, apartments. These are your applications and servers. But what makes a city functional? It's the infrastructure. It's the roads, the highways, the traffic lights, and the security checkpoints that connect everything together and control traffic. Without that infrastructure, the most impressive skyscraper is just an isolated building. And that city infrastructure is cloud networking. So why do hiring managers care so much about this? At its core, the cloud is just an abstraction on traditional IT concepts. All of the flashy services are just someone else's computers running on a network. By mastering networking, you prove that you understand these fundamentals. It shows hiring managers that you can solve problems from first principles. And this makes you attractive to them because you understand the foundation that will still be relevant 10 years from now, long after the current tools have changed. But do you need to become a networking master? Do you need to go and get a certification? I don't think so. For your first cloud role, it's not about being an expert. It's about understanding the fundamentals. You need to be able to explain what a VPC is, what a subnet does, how a routing table works, and how security groups protect an application. A good free resource I recommend for getting these core concepts down is this networking fundamentals playlist. Watch that, understand the why behind each component, and then you'll be ready to apply it. So although you now know what skills hiring managers are actually looking for, this is actually only half the story in getting a cloud job. You need to learn how to apply this knowledge. Simply watching tutorials or doing another course will lead you straight into the tutorial hell trap that stops most people from getting hired. So watch this video next where I share the exact steps to learn cloud skills effectively and make sure the work you're putting in actually leads to a job offer.